Okay, hopefully we'll get a recording, but either way, it's fine. Okay, so now that I'm live in the record, I'm going to say this off record. Okay, my husband's going to bring over the sources, so he'll hand it out. Patty, no. Lillian, you can't stand. When your husband comes, he'll give out the source sheets to everyone, the Mikola. I'll hand them to you and you give it out. Thanks so much. Okay, Patty, you're restricted. Oh, I could get my sources on my phone. Okay, so I'm on the way with sources. So I'll be honest, I was like strongly considering not doing a share this week. I had like a really, really bad mental day yesterday, like mental health breakdown. I spent like most of the day just like a wreck. I thought like for sure I'll be better today. I'll get through it. And I like woke up this morning like still feeling like I can't teach myself like as myself. And I'm feeling so like broken inside. But I pushed through. I did a lot of writing, and obviously it's very healing for me to teach as well, to teach Torah and connect. So I decided this would be best for me. So I just sharing. So I don't feel like 100% myself. That's probably why I'm not starting yet. I think I just needed to like get it together today. But I think it's good to. But not everyone is always like as happy on the outside, on the inside as they look on the outside. And we all go through things, and you're never alone. And if you're having a rough day, and if you're having a really, really hard day, if you're having a panic attack or mental breakdown, or whatever it is, I think the most important thing is to not think you're like the only one, and there's something wrong with you, or you're damaged or broken. And there's always someone to talk to, and I'm always here to for anyone to share. And like everyone here is for me as well. So okay, let's jump in, which is really it's really fitting because Tammuz is really like very connected to this idea. So we'll go through Tammuz. So raise your hand if you've been at a shir specifically for Tammuz in. Sure, you for sure have been here. Okay, and raise your hand if you've been to the monthly shirim before, like the idea of the monthly, how we go through the monthly cycles, right? I think Lillian, you're the only one as your first time going through the month with us. Yes. You've been here for the month. Anytime we did art before, it's a monthly shiur. Every Rosh Chodesh, every week shiur, every month we do a component, something to celebrate as women. So thank you to our artists of the day, Sharon. These arts are just gorgeous. Like I'm looking at them, they're just so beautiful. Mapping out our brain patterns and healing through like art is so beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, so Tammuz. So the way it works, just for whoever's watching, whoever's listening, whoever's watching. So today's class is going to be a deep dive into the Kabbalistic concepts in the month of Tammuz, the Jewish month of Tammuz, which is the zodiac sign of Cancer. And we're going to be discovering a lot of deep elements of this month and how we can utilize the energy of the month through Sefer Yetzira to grow through the month. So aside for the astrological sign, the first Kabbalistic book, Sefer Yetzira, tells us that every month has a lot of other deep associations, deep things connected to the month. For example, the name of the month, of course, the zodiac sign of the month, the permutation of how Hashem's name is arranged during this month, which in this month it is Hey exactly backwards as it is originally. Hashem's name in the first month, Nisan, is Yud, Hey, then Vav, and Hey. And in Tammuz, it's reversed. So it's a very reversed energy. It's a more hidden energy in this month. So it's Hey, Vav, Hey, Yud, backwards. We have Shevet, there's 12 tribes, 12 Jewish tribes. We have a tribe connect every month. And the tribe of this month is Reuven, which actually means Hashem has seen my pain. And that's why Leah named her son Reuven. And the physical, my favorite thing to explore the month is the physical bodily sense of the month. Every month we're connected to one of our bodily senses more than any other month, and we can elevate and grow specifically through that bodily sense. And in this month is the sense of sight, which is very much elevating our sight, changing our sight, and growing through our sight in this month. Not all the senses are the 5 senses. In Kabbalah, there's more than that. We also explore the sense of laughter, the sense of anger, our sense of sexuality, the sense of sleeping, the sense of dreaming. These are all very physical. And the reason I like these ones to explore these the most is because I feel like they're the most practical, like that we can actually like utilize. We can utilize this energy more than just conceptual cool ideas. It's actually something we can do physically in our body to grow through the month. So that's why I specifically like to expound on that. So let's begin. Before we get deeper, we're going to start by the outer layers of the month and go deeper. So we're going to work through first the history of Tammuz. So the name, we'll talk about the name in a moment. The history in the Jewish calendar of Tammuz is that it's actually a pretty challenging month in our history. This is the month when the first, in this month, we don't really have any celebration days, but we do have days of fasting and days of mourning. Oh, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. My birthday present. Okay, we have our sources. Thanks, Lillian. And I get my notes. Hooray! This is literally what I'm going through. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, we also discover the letter of the month. Every month, it says Hashem sends the chayut of the month through a letter in the alphabet, it's channeled through that letter. And in this month, it's a letter of Chet. Okay, Chet, right? The 8th letter of the alphabet. So let us explore for a minute the history of the month. Historically, we have Sefer Tammuz, which is the day that we most famously known for the beginning of the siege of the walls of Jerusalem. It's a fast day, and there was a 3-week siege on Jerusalem until the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed on Tisha B'Av, on the 9th of Av, which is a national day of mourning. Till today, everyone mourns, and it's a mandatory fast for everyone, even pregnant women, unless they're at risk, health risk. So, what is so devastating about this day? What happened on Sefer Tammuz? Actually, 5 things happened throughout history on different years that kept happening on this day. The one that we most famously talk about is the one where we fast for, which is the sieging of the walls of Jerusalem. But the truth is that before the breaking of the walls of Jerusalem, something happened even before that. The first time something negative happened on this day. Does anyone know? Yeah, what happened on this day?
Every year they find breaks await because of asking for
Yes, specifically on this day was the day that Moshe broke the luchos, because he came down. He came down from the mountain. He miscalculated the time, and the Jewish people built the golden calf because they thought Moshe was going to come back down, and that was when Moshe. So really, the negative things that happened were that the golden calf was made, which was very connected to our religion. I'll touch on that later. And then Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the luchos. That was the first thing that happened. And I once heard a rabbi give a mashal that when somebody breaks something, it breaks a bone in their body, that part of their body has to be taken with extra care and caution. And that's why we guard these days of Sefer Tammuz, because we have a fracture in our essential connection to our own core. So that area we want to guard, because we keep seeing that the bone keeps breaking a lot of times in the same place. Like when my son has stitches, he keeps getting stitches in the same spot because it's a fragile place. So it's a fragile place in our history, and it's interesting. Cyclically, on that day, 5 times very devastating things happened on that same day. So there was the breaking of the luchos. In Tammuz was when the spies came back as well from scouting out the land of Israel and said that the negative things, they saw the negativity in Eretz Yisrael. Then we have the breaching of the walls of Jerusalem, the siege, the Babylonian siege of Shalayim. Apostolmos burned the Torah as well, the idol placed in the Holy Temple. Okay, so that's enough about the negative. Tammuz is also a very holy month. We're going to speak now about the positive. The positive history in Tammuz is on Gimel Tammuz, which in Kabbalah is famous for being the day of the Rebbe's passing. We're going to have lots of Farbrengens. Shoshana Yudelman is doing one, and Rebbe Mokat's husband are doing one on Thursday night, and there's one in Hebrew. Everyone flies, lots of people fly to the Ohel of the Rebbe for Gimel Tammuz. But before Gimel Tammuz was a Chabad day, it was actually a really holy day on the Jewish calendar. It's the day that Yoshua stopped the sun, that Hashem stopped the sun. It was called the day of Shemesh B'Givon, that the Jewish people were fighting a war against a lot of our enemies in conquering Israel. And we were successful. We had this miracle to be successful as long as the sun was up. So Hashem stopped the sun. The Gemara goes to different opinions of how long he stopped the sun. The shortest is 6 extra hours, and the longest is 2 days that the sun didn't set. So we have this powerful day of the sun, which is very relevant and connected to Tammuz, because Tammuz is the hottest month of the year. And Tammuz itself, the word Tammuz means a furnace. It means heat. It's a Babylonian word that was taken. Most of the names of the Jewish months are taken from Galus Babel. And it's a name that means the furnace, this heat, because it makes sense. We have the hottest day of the year. It's called the solar eclipse. I'm making things up. The solar solstice. The lunar solstice is the shortest day of the year. The solar solstice is the longest day of the year. You'll see the days are the longest day of the year. There's the sun at its strongest and the sun at its greatest in this month. But it's so the name. We're going to go a little bit more into the name Tammuz. So that was the history of the month. Then we have the Rebbe's passing now as a Chabad calendar. We have the Rebbe's passing, which was also the first thing Chabad celebrated. Years prior, the previous Chabad Rebbe was sentenced to death in Russia for spreading Torah, and his death sentence was annulled on Gimel Tammuz. So it was always a celebratory day that the Rebbe celebrated, because his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, was taken, his death sentence was taken away, and on Yud B'Av Tammuz is when it's a real big celebration, because he's actually taken to prison. He went from being sentenced to death to being a free man. A little while later, and now it's a day that is a very holy day in Chabad, and we learn that when a tzaddik passes away, rather than being it's also a painful day for Chabad, because we lost the Lubavitch Rebbe, but there's also an element that when a tzaddik passes away, that we see specifically in this week's part, The class begins. Hi. Welcome. What's your name? You've been here before? Welcome. I'm Kiki. So happy to have you join. Feel free to color. So the train of thought. This week's Parsha and Parsha's Chukas speaks about the Para Aduma, because the ultimate chok that irrational Jewish law is the and the Parsha begins with speaking of the death in this Parsha of Miriam and Aaron, I believe. And Parsha says, what's the connection between the Para Aduma and the death of Tzaddikim? And we say that just like a Para Aduma atones, comes to atone for sins, the death of a tzaddik comes to atone, which means to cleanse us, to purify us. And when we learn that a tzaddik on his day of passing, like the Rashbi, he said it's the holiest day, because on a person's day of their passing, their soul and all of their good deeds and everything they brought to the world is revealed, and we connect with it we feel it in a much stronger way, and it comes to greatness on the day of their passing. So I guess that's why it's a meaningful day in Chabad, and it also is very much connected to the Parsha. Okay, so the name Tammuz, let's go. We're going to do the original meaning of the name Tammuz is that it means heat, but it actually shares a name with a pagan idol that the Rambam speaks about in depth. There was an idol called Tammuz. I did not bring the whole story of Tammuz, but Tammuz was somebody who was who was killed. Yechezkel goes through the vision that Hashem showed him of the woman in the Beis HaMikdash sitting and making the Tammuz weep, the idol Tammuz weep. So the Rambam explains different types of pagan idol worship. And Tammuz was a hero who had like a hard life and a tragic ending, and they would make plays. They put on plays in Yerushalayim. It was a very popular play that they would put on, and it even came to the Yerushalayim. And it was done right near the Beis HaMikdash. These plays about this idol that they play about this person Tammuz. And after the play, they would weep for his lost love and the loss of his life and this tragic way that he died. And the way that they created an idol named Tammuz, and they would serve it by putting lead in his eye sockets and then putting fire behind it so that the lead would melt and it would look like the idol was weeping. And then all the women would come and weep along with it. And it was specifically a play that was done every summer because it was like signifying the end of like the summer is beginning to end because we're getting to the biggest day of the summer, all the lost love, all the lost opportunities, despair, the good times are ending, now we're going into the dark times of winter and it's going to be cold. So everyone would weep along with Tammuz. And Yechezkel says that he had this troubling vision that women would sit by the Beis HaMikdash making the idol Tammuz weep. And it was granted and begging they said that you would get an offering and the idol would grant things if you would weep before it. So they really served this idol thinking that it was the God that would grant them their wishes, that they would cry before it. Really tragic. So even though nowadays we don't have the same taiva, the same desire we can't really get to the idea of serving and thinking that a metal thing is going to give us our wishes, we can still carry this element of the way that we serve that idol in our life. And today it reflects itself in a way of that the desire to kind of like self-pity, to weep with self-pity, but not just self-pity, to weep in despair. It's a pull, which is a real avodah zarah. We learn that weeping despair is akin to serving avodah zarah because it's saying like, there's no hope for me. I'm just a subject to my fate because naturally, my fate is just bad. And forgetting that there's a Hashem who's much way above fate, and there's real hashkafa pratis, there's purpose. Hashem has a meaning for you. Hashem woke you up every day. There's a purpose for you. Hashem only does good. It's denying all the good from Hashem. It's forgetting about the elements of God, that Hashem is beyond fate and Hashem can change our destiny. Giving up is like saying Hashem does not pull up. Because naturally, you might want to give up, but Hashem is beyond the laws of nature. So of course Hashem could pull us through. So it was, and now it's like, it's succumbing to just despairing and thinking like those voices in our head that tell us there's no hope, don't try. I'm not to say that you're evil for thinking those things, but it's a similar type of falling prey to those avodah zarah voices in our heads, or the voices from outside of us who tell us, don't even try, nothing's ever going to get better, it's going to be like this forever. It's a despairing way of looking at weeping. So it's called the unholy tears of despair. It's really like how we would summarize this avodah zarah or the activity of Tammuz. We want to talk about the good, right? So we're going to talk now. We're going to now realize that Tammuz is actually a very deep paradox. Because on the one hand, it's there's a lot of goodness in the month of Tammuz, like in the Shemesh B'Gibon and the element of light. So we learn this from the letter Chet. Now the letter Chet is through energy of Tammuz comes through Chet. We're still speaking about the little negative harshness of Tammuz. Because Tammuz can be a harsh month for a lot of people because the light of Hashem is rather than in a very open way in the letters of how Hashem's name flows to us. It truly, everything stems from the letters of Hashem's name as they are arranged in this month. So if Hashem's name are backwards, it's going to be harder to connect to the light of Hashem in this month. It might be covered. In fact, we learned that the months of the year when Esav and Yaakov met when Esav and Yaakov met at the Har after Yaakov had his Shratim, and it says that they said, we'll meet at Har Moriah. It says they divided their assets. Because Zohar tells us that they divided time, space, and people, and they divided the months of the year between themselves. And we just came from the three Yaakov's months, Nisan, Iyar, and Sivan, the months of receiving the Torah, being freed from Egypt, all the revelation, being freed from Mitzrayim, and now we're entering the Esav months. Esav took the months of Tammuz, of the summer months, the heat months, Tammuz of and Elul. But through his tears and Teshuvah, Yaakov took back Elul, which is why Elul was a month of Teshuvah, because it was supposed to be a month of Esav, and Yaakov said, no, we need Elul. So we took back Elul. So it's a month that stems from Esav, but we actually learn deeper that on the outside it seems like it's a month of concealment. But if we learn in Chassidut that there is two types of light, and really the name of this class, if I would tell you, the name of this class is Seeing in the Darkness, learning to see in the dark, because there's an element of light that comes through darkness, and we discuss this a lot in Hanukkah, that is a much deeper level of light that comes from the act when there isn't darkness there. Right? There's a more basic level of goodness that we only experience true goodness after having a challenge that we pulled that goodness from, or the good that comes through a challenge, through a dark situation, the stars that we can see only when it's dark outside. And so there's an element we learn in that there's two types of light in this world. There's light or goodness from Hashem, that everything that comes through Hashem is good. Hashem only can give good. Hashem is good, and all that comes from Him is good. But there's this is very much in the first time we see the letter Chet in the Torah is in the beginning of when Hashem created the world. It says Choshech. For the first time, it must be before that, because it's before Vayichin Choshech. It's Choshech al pnei tehom, Baruch Elokim merchefes al pnei hamayim. Right. So the first test in the Torah is Ba'aretz Haisa, so sight and seeing. And yet it's the month of Chet, which the first Chet in the Torah affects all of the Chets, because the first time we see the letter Chet, it's connected to darkness. So you would see that darkness makes there be an absence of sight, because it's very hard to see in the dark. I actually have vision problems at night. I can't drive at night, but I totally in 2020 during the day. So darkness becomes an impediment to our vision in my old age.
Esther Everett, 91.
Yeah.
She sees very well.
In the dark? Really? She's like a bat. Wow. Esther's just finding everything. She's amazing. What we're trying to say is that there's something going on here, because on the one hand, it's the month of sight. It is the month of correcting sight. On the other hand, there's darkness that overwhelms this month in a certain way, in the 3 weeks beginning of this month. So we want to understand what's going on. So we actually learned that there's an element of good that comes through darkness, that there's good that Hashem gives us, that could be, that there's good, it says, but that it also says a few times in this pasuk that it was tov ma'od, that the Hashem made dark and made light, and it was good. Now we learned that light and good are synonymous. Goodness and light is synonymous, and darkness is like the absence of light and the absence of good. And darkness is like the number one thing that interferes with light and good. But darkness is not an actual reality. So I want to just explore what darkness truly is. Because if really everything that comes from Hashem, darkness is a certain element that let us see the good that's already there. The room and the reality stays the same. There can be a room full of good things, but in the darkness, you can't see the good. So the good is there, but there's an element of darkness, of coverings that doesn't allow us to see the good. And then when we move away the darkness, and suddenly we're exposed to seeing that there was so much good in that room, but we couldn't even see the good because there was so much darkness. So darkness is not an actual bad thing. It's just rather something that obscures the good that is already there. So we learn that there's light that Hashem gives us that we can fit into vessels, then it becomes good. When there's light that we can receive, then it is good. And that's what we have as called revealed good, because it's revealed within our vessels. And then there's good that Hashem sends us that comes from actually the deeper level of Hashem's kindness. We learn it comes from such a level of Hashem's love, but as it comes into this world, it is dark. It says, and the blind person is actually called Sagin Hahar. He has too much light. There's so much light coming from his eyes that he's blinded by the light, right? When there's too much light in your face, you can't see. So that's the element of when there's so much good Hashem is sending us that we're completely blinded and we're unable to see it. And it's a lot. This is just everything that Tammuz is about, basically, is understanding that there's good that comes to us and we see that this is great, right? Good things happening to me. And then there's struggles that come to us and it seems like it's darkness and painful, but truly Hashem only sends us good. And we really, how do we get to that good? But we have to first understand that it is good, but what is coming from such a deep place, and it can't fit in a vessel, it's painful. And we learn this through the crab and through the essence of Cancer. We're going to talk about it in a moment. It is a painful reality because we can't receive the good, we can't accept it, and we can't see the good in it. It becomes really uncomfortable and painful. Being in a room that's dark, even if there's good things in it, it's uncomfortable and painful and challenging. We're not going to minimize anyone's real challenges and say that they're really good. In its element, in its core, in its source, Hashem is trying to send something good. And oftentimes, the good is so deep that it comes out. And we learn this in so many places in the Torah, where the klalos are the deeper level of love from Hashem, where Rishon Bar Yochai sent his son to get brachos from the scholars, and they started cursing him. He said, "Why are you cursing? Why did you get cursed?" He said, "No, those were actually the deepest levels of," and he explained to him how all those curses were. Someone might ask you some water. No, not. Thank you, Esther. Just being really thirsty. Colorful water is great. Okay, first I don't know if I should call me a bird. Okay, so we have good and we have concealed good. It's called in Chassidut or Kabbalah, Oma Disgalia, revealed good, and Oma Discasia, revealed good. Now the hidden world, it's good, but it's really hard to say that it's good, and it feels like suffering. It's good, but it's really hard to say that it's good, and it feels like suffering. It feels like darkness, and it feels challenging, and that is real. And those things that we feel are real. But what happens is, how do we access the good that's in it, transform it into good? So I'm going to take a detour now and talk about the crab for a minute. The crab, and I wasn't going to do this later, but the crab, I learned something really unique about the crab. First of all, we'll talk about the water later. The crab is really unique in that the crab is probably one of the only creatures that I know about that has that its skeleton, rather than being inside his body, it's on the outside of his body. It's called an exoskeleton. So the way that the crab, I have to just keep sharing the videos of the cute crabs. Crabs, when their skeletons on the outside of their body, and when they need to, they put a shell to protect themselves from the sun. Otherwise, if they're in the sun, they'll die in a minute. So they put shells on their body, and when their body inside is growing, they need to break their shell and then create a new shell, or grow a new shell, or have actually like a seashell over their body to fit their new body. Now, what happens? How do they know they need to break their shell? When it gets really uncomfortable. So what do we learn from this, right? Great. Crabs are cool. They break their shells. They get new shells. Awesome. It's really cool to watch. I once saw with my husband on like nature. We're like nature weirdos, and we like watching videos, and we literally, it's like our day night. We watch like a bunch of crabs lining up in a row. They line themselves up from smallest to biggest, and they have seconds because the sun is scorching hot, and they need to protect their body from the heat. Otherwise, they'll die. So they line up in a row with all of their shells on their back, the biggest one, and they all switch shells. So the smaller one gives his shell to the next one, the bigger gives the shell to the next person. They switch off, and then the biggest one has to find a new shell, and that's how they do it. So they switch shells. You'll see them doing it super, super fast. It's so cool. Anyway, so besides for being cool, what do we learn from this? So I think this is from the Even Yisrael of Dean Steinsaltz, so I don't remember exactly. And this like blew my mind. He says that we learn from this that, first of all, like the base premise is that when we grow, we need to grow. Our shell needs to grow to fit we need to be able to get to the next level. We need to be able to get rid of the previous level, to grow through that, to break that, which sometimes is painful, to break through that previous stage to get to a higher stage. Just like you need to break down your house to get to build your house, which my dad said, why are you ruining my house? Or why are you taking me out of my job, or taking me out of this? Why are you ruining my marriage, my job? Why are bad things happening? But then we realize that sometimes we need to break the previous home or the previous shell that we had to get to a higher shell. So might be afterwards like, oh my gosh, thank God that he left me. Thank God that they fired me, because now I finally got to the job that was much more fulfilling for me. The biggest blessing. It was hard to see it at first. This is like, we break down a house. It's not a bad thing. Like, someone would say, why are you ruining your house? You're like, well, I'm digging a bigger house, right? So part of growth is shedding our previous layers and breaking through those, which is a painful process. It's a painful thing. It causes pain and discomfort. So that's one thing we learned from a crab, that to grow, there is a level of destruction that comes first to get to the next level. Just like a seed, we always talk about a seed, that it needs to germinate and disintegrate in order to grow into then a tree. Now, even taking it even deeper, the previous Rebbe who we spoke about, who's like Yom HaGula, Yom Tammuz, he shared something that that someone came to him and said, like, asked him why he keeps having struggles in his life. Why is one struggle after the next, and one challenge, one darkness after the next? And he said something so profound. He said that if you're wearing clothing, if you're growing, and we're out, right? If we keep growing, if you're small and you grow, or you grow wider or taller, and you try to fit into the clothing you were before, you're gonna be uncomfortable. And if your feet grow in size, you're trying to fit into your smaller feet, you're going to be uncomfortable. If I'm a size like 14 or 16, trying to fit into a size 8 or 4 or 10, I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to have pain. I'm probably going to have stomach issues. I might have serious complications if I keep trying to fit my larger body into smaller clothing. If my kid is trying to fit into really tight clothing, he's going to have pain, comfort, maybe like circulation cut off. The more we try to fit into smaller clothing. So he didn't actually directly connect this to a crab. Just like a crab who's trying to fit into a shell that's not big enough for it is going to be really uncomfortable and it's going to cause him pain. So he says that as you're growing in life, as your neshama is growing, just like our body grows, our neshama grows as well. Our neshama expands and gets larger as we age. And as we learn through life experiences, and the Rebbe blessed people on their birthday, he said, another year, he said in Yiddish, like another year smarter, another year stronger, another year firmer. And we understand this in a very deep way. Why does another year make it to be firmer? Because when you turn another age, your neshama is growing as well. Your neshama is larger, your revelation, you're growing, meaning your flame inside of you is getting brighter. You're having more yearning, more connection. You just feel much more connected to your neshama. And as your neshama grows, if the clothing, just like if your body grows and the clothing don't fit your neshama, you're gonna be uncomfortable. And then as soon as you buy new clothing, right? I did that. Someone smart, I was miserable crying after my third was born. Not even my pregnancy clothes fit me, and I was miserable. Someone's like, just go to the Kabbalah, throw out all your clothes. I literally emptied out one day in a fit of like rage and tears. I took every single thing out of my closet that doesn't fit me. It left me with like one thing. And I'm like, okay, it's time to buy new clothes. I went to the Kabbalah, and I'm like, hopefully, I don't know how long I'll need these clothes for. I don't know, like whatever. I went to the Kabbalah, bought like extra large clothing, and I was no longer miserable, like emotionally, mentally, physically, like just stressed out because I was trying to fit into clothes that just don't fit me anymore. You know, new mama deserves new clothing, new size deserves new clothing. Rather than trying to lose weight to fit into our old clothing, maybe this is our new mom bod, and this is what being a mother and having children is about. Rather than doing that and making ourselves miserable on so many levels, buy clothing that fit the new you, right? Fit the new you, and then through self-love, that's how you grow. So it was like really such a small idea, but it was so healing for me to just realize I don't have to lose weight. I'm like, I have clothing that I keep still that I will never ever fit into. And like I keep having to let go. Like I have like bags that say like small clothing that will never fit me that I'm just keeping to like in the hopes that I'll fit into it, rather than saying like this is me now and then let me find clothing that fit me. But like as long as I'm healthy, let me look for clothing that fits me instead of being miserable. And when you do that, you expand and you find new clothing. And you have to do the same thing for your neshama as well. You have to go through your wardrobe. And Chassidus tells us in the 4th chapter of Tanya that what are your soul's clothing? Your soul has clothing. The clothing are the 3 things that are the levushim of your soul, where that your soul expresses herself to the outside world. We spoke about this last week, that the soul's 3 modes of expression of outward clothing that it clothes itself in are the machshava, deeper, and mind. The levushim of the neshama and Chassidut and Kabbalah are called the thought, speech, and action. The neshama's thought, speech, and action are how she clothes herself to relate to the outside world through thinking, through speaking, and through doing. So the Rabbi said that as your neshama is getting larger, you have to become firmer. Your actions, thought, and speech have to grow to accommodate your neshama. And the Fried Rebbe says that they're not experiencing pain. So that man was going back to the story of the previous Rebbe, when that man came to him and said that why am I experiencing so much pain and suffering in my life? He said, this is not the reason you're experiencing pain or discomfort is because your soul is getting larger, but your actions and your thought and speech are on the same level as before. So your soul is so uncomfortable. So you're feeling uncomfortable. You're feeling not good in your life. You're feeling bad all the time, and the discomfort is going to come naturally from your soul not fitting into clothing. And what you need to do is expand your clothing to meet the growth of your neshama. So if your neshama, if you're getting more and more spiritual connected to Hashem, but you're acting the same exact way, you're going to feel a disconnect and the tightness and the squishiness, and you're going to feel uncomfortable. And so expanding our clothing, being more from, doesn't just mean being outwardly from, because we spoke about that last week, like a Korach, like being holier than thou and rushing to shul and ignoring the poor man in the corner. It means doing a really big soul searching and say, how can I expand my level of thought to see people? And when I see somebody, as we're growing and we're becoming a holier person, the way I think has to change as well. My thoughts about other people, first and foremost, have to change. When I see somebody being nasty, the lesser me could have been like, oh, they're just an obnoxious, disgusting person. Well, now when I see somebody being nasty, my thought should be like, that person hurt people. If that person is yelling, who knows what they must have gone through? They may have just lost that. They may have just gone through a tragedy. We don't know what mental health state they're in. We don't know if they're suicidal, if somebody just did something terrible to them, that they were abused in some way. So when we see somebody now, our thoughts should change. Our thoughts should be thinking about people as if every single person just went through the biggest tragedy in their life and dealing with that meanest person with more compassion than anyone else. Being like, wow, like it looks like you had such a hard day. Like you must be going through so much. Like being extra compassionate to that person. Our speech has to change. When we speak about other people, the way we speak about ourselves has to grow to accommodate our neshama. We have to correct the way we speak and say, wait a minute, I can't speak bad about myself anymore. I can't put myself down. I can't speak negatively about other people. I have to be careful in my conversation. They're not about people and, even things. Let me expand my conversations with people, my day-to-day, instead of just saying, like, what are you doing this summer? To how are you feeling? What's going on in your life right now, right? To really getting to really care about people, to listening better. Our actions should be growing. And then this is like, our actions should be growing to accomplish my soul. How can I bring in my life through my actions? How can I push myself to make my actions, to have which are my levushim for my soul, be greater? How can I elevate my actions a little bit more? Could I be kind or go out of my way more for people? Can I smile at people more often to make their day? Can I look at every situation that I'm in and say, what good can I do right now in a situation where I'm feeling stuck? What more can I do in the situation that I have? How can I elevate my actions, my responses to people, my anger, and be more compassionate? There's so many ways we can elevate our levushim. And he says, when you elevate your levushim, then your soul fits into it, and then you're comfortable in your life. And that's not God forbid to say that if somebody is having tragedies in life, it's because they're not holy enough. God forbid. But it is a way for us to look at ourselves and say, as my soul grows, how can I accommodate, make more space through my clothing, through my soul's clothing? So that is the message from Cancer, from the crab. Now, bringing this back, that just like the crab needs to shed her outer shell to match her to match her body's inner growth. As we grow, we want to expand. And that's one way to look at challenges and darkness in our life. And especially in this month of Tammuz, there's one way we could reconcile this dark times and realize that through the darkness that people might experience in this month or in their time, in their life in general, and we're going to talk about sight, right? We're thinking about it's a month of sight, but it's also a month of having darkness, that sometimes it's the darker things in our life and it's the challenges in our life that actually point us in the direction of like where to find the light, right? It's like where to look for the treasure. So if we're experiencing a challenge in some area, maybe in that area, if we can look at that as what, like it must be that there's so much light. So fine, I'm going to tie back in. There's so much light that there's not enough garments to hold it. So when there's darkness in our life, we learn that there's light from Hashem that doesn't have a vessel large enough to contain. And when the way, so we were talking before, that how do I see the light in dark situations in my life? Even because we're saying it is good, but I don't see it as good. It doesn't help me if there's tons of goodness here, if it's all dark around me. So the way to do that is literally the same thing, is to grow slowly through the challenge, to see it as a new challenge to myself, to grow through it, and that to create a vessel large enough to contain that light. So we need a vessel big enough. The light has to go through a vessel that can contain it. If there's light and no vessel, then it's blinding, right? And if there's a vessel to contain it, if there's a place to contain it, then we can use it, we can utilize it. If there's water falling from the heaven or blessings falling from the sky, we can't contain it in something, it's not a blessing, it's just miserable. But if we can create a container to contain the brachos and the great light Hashem wants to give us, then that's when we expand enough, and suddenly it's not a challenge anymore, and suddenly it's all we're left with is not the challenge, but all the light that challenge gave us, all the good that we got through it. It was just such an amazing way to look at it. That and it takes time. It's not like momentarily, but it shifts when we say, okay, like this is a challenge. As I start to I'm going to grow through this challenge, and I'm going to see what good I can take from it, what messages I can find in it, how I can how I can grow through this. There's always an opportunity for growth. There's always an opportunity to find light in this, to find good in this moment, and to see, even if it's the deepest challenge, how this can make me more compassionate to other people, how I can see, how I can understand and relate to people so much more. And from my experiences, severe darkness and intense depression after my first son was born, to the point of self-harm and really scary things, and coming through on the other side, in that time, I don't think for a second I would have been like, this is a blessing. But after, now that the Baruch Hashem, the depression is gone, even though I still have hard days here and there, but on a day-to-day basis, not suffering from depression, anxiety's left. But again, we're in a really, really, really good place compared to where I was, where I wouldn't say I'm suffering even close to how I was then. But what I am left with is so much light, and I would never go back to that situation and say I wish it hadn't happened. If I can go back in time and do it differently, I wouldn't. Maybe I would make different choices along the way, but I wouldn't say I wish that wouldn't have happened to me, because the goodness that came to my life, the empathy, the depth, the connection, the growth, the inner growth, the person that I am now, I'm a different person because of what I do in a good way. The ability to connect to people, the ability to really see other people's pain, I used to judge people who self-harm, thinking not bad at them, but they wanted attention. The ability to judge, to see pain, and to see where it comes from. I never spoke about this in public before. This is the first time I've ever said that out loud. And I think my friend, I don't know if she's watching, so my friend came out and posted about being on Instagram, and she posted about being in a psych ward. And I was like, what? Wow, I can't believe she wrote that. And the best was so empowering, because you never, on Instagram, she was posting a picture of herself. It looked like she was this gorgeous model on Instagram, and she was in that time she was having like suicidal thoughts, but like no one would know. She just looks like the most perfect mom, and most of her Instagram is just her being the most like perfect family that you want to hate, like gorgeous, put together, like all the kids, like everyone never looks stressed out, and you're just like, I can't follow you. I mean, for me, like I can't. It's just puts pressure on me. Hearing her say that was just like, wow, like it's so empowering for people to know they're not alone. So that I think that empowered me to just be more open. I don't think like, because I realized like, I'm not judging her for her struggles. I'm just thinking, wow, like what inspiration that she can share that. So hopefully through sharing dark times. So I think that what you're left with after I grew, the growth process to grow enough to be able to contain that, whatever Hashem was giving me through that experience, took a lot of time. It took at least a year or more, a long journey of growing enough to be able to contain that light. But now all I'm left with is the good. Mostly just like so much goodness that I wouldn't take back. So I think it's learning to see. That's what the topic of this class in Tammuz, like learning to be able to see Kedusha. Thank you so much. To see blessing in the darkness, to be able to see the challenges for what they are, to be able to see that I want to grow through this and be able to have space to receive the light, to grow my vessels. And once your vessel's large enough, then the light is no longer blinding or darkening. The darkness is cleared, and then we can see all of the gifts that were there already. But really, it's only retroactive. We don't tell somebody who's going through a hard time, this is really a good thing right now. That's if we could, if we can encourage somebody and give them hope in the darkness, then once they reach that place of healing and like growth and seeing and choosing to be in that moment, and rather than being like the idol worship of Tammuz, of despair, saying something bad is happening to me, if somebody chooses to go that route and saying, well, bad is happening to me, forget it, I'm never going to get through it, I'm going to be miserable forever, it's never going to get better, then we miss that opportunity and we're never going to find the pearl. So there's a moment of switch where someone has to say like, okay, like this is hard, I'm not taking from the pain, but rather than despair, I'm going to Jewish weeping tears are actually very holy. So the tears of serving the despair of the Tammuz that come from Avodah Zarah. The tears of mourning, Jewish people mourn, and we cry during mourning, and we rip our clothing. But in that mourning, in that depth, is a lot of hope. Is a lot of comfort and hope, and knowing that Hashem will get me through this, knowing that Hashem is there for me, knowing that Hashem only wants good for me, and knowing that somewhere deep down, like this is what Hashem wanted. My friend recently lost a child. And she was the only thing that gets her through. Like she says herself 1,000 times, like this is meant to happen. Like Hashem wanted this to happen. Like nothing I did to make this happen. Like the only thing that keeps her sane is like Hashem planned for this to happen. Like this was a challenge. You're supposed to live this long. It was a tikkun, and like that's what gets her through. So it's tears, but it's also a level of emunah, of knowing that deep down Hashem always was good. So if Hashem there is good. This is good. I don't see how, but I know that it's good. So it's knowing that this is going to lead to more good, and that right now is the darkest time. But even though it's hard to see how this is good, I know that it will be good eventually. I know that. So it's a time of, I'm learning that the weeping and the crying is a cleansing thing. It cleanses our eyes. It cleanses us to, when we cry, we're so afraid of being weak. But through tears, we cleanse a lot of we cleanse a lot of the coarseness, and we become more purified. We become more sensitive. We become more sensitive to others. It's interesting because Tammuz, the water signs are the weeping signs are the most sensitive signs. So Tammuz is the most water sign. Even though I always thought Scorpio is the most water sign, Tammuz, these 3 months in the summer are ruled by water, are the water dominant signs. And of the water signs, there's water of water. So Tammuz is a water sign of the summer months, which are all water. And water is the sensitivity, the seat of emotion. So people who are born in Tammuz or Cancer tend to be very sensitive people. A lot of emotion, a lot of depth of emotion, and often they shut down and put on outward appearance of the crowd of not caring, being offended, not being emotional. The wall of Cancer have a lot of deep emotions. Oftentimes, they're not going to be sharing their outside world. They're very guarded. So they're not going to be openly vulnerable at all. There are a lot of times that people who really shy away from vulnerability. They have to be like seeing emotions because their emotions are so deep and so intense, and have so much emotion. It's like too much in a way for them to deal with. And they're so overwhelmed that they just kind of like shut down emotionally a lot and shut people out rather than like bring people into the emotional world. And the growth of Cancer is being able to, rather than be in that selfish mode of focusing their emotions on themselves and that self-pity, that sensitivity towards others, and saying like, wow, I was gifted with so much water, with these like tears, these cleansing tears, that the Cancers are so gifted at being able to connect another person, to see and be so sensitive to another person's feelings, another person's emotions, to caring for another person. Another thing that was really cool is that these 3 months, I forgot, are the months that Moshe was hidden, because it says that Moshe was hidden for 3 months, because Moshe was born on Adar. So I'm wrong. Never mind. So I'm wrong. It's not these months, but the Zohar says that when it says the 3 hidden months that Moshe was hidden for, it's talking about these months that are the light hidden for in these months. Moshe is very much connected to Tammuz, to Cancer and Crab. It says that Hashem was first going to destroy the base of the vision of. But because Av is the month of crab, and it's a water sign, Tammuz, sorry. In Tammuz, Hashem was going to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, but because it's a water sign, and Moshe was saved by water, and because it's so connected to water, and the crab also lives in water, it has to be in water a certain amount of time to, like, it can't be away from water for too long to survive, in order to survive. So thanks to the water that saved Moshe's life when he was 3 months hidden, Hashem said, we can't do this bad thing this month, we're going to wait for Av. So that's why it happened in Av. So I guess, like, tying all this together, there's just an element of the crab and the seeing in the darkness is being able to recognize that there's so much light being given to me right now that sometimes when there's too much light, it feels painful. Someone is smothering you with love, right? And they're choking you. It's like a painful thing. So, like, that's a bad nutshell, but like, we need to be able to have space. When we don't have space for the good that someone's giving us, it's not welcome, and it comes across. It's not comfortable. So we want to create more space for that by growing through the challenges, by being able to look in the darkness. And we learn this from Rabbi Akiva in this month, that he was like the correction of how they looked at the negative side of weeping, of despairing, of looking at ourselves and self-pitying in Tammuz, and focusing our sensitivity on ourselves rather than focusing our sensitivity to others. When we're feeling down and sad and bad about ourselves, we can change that sensitivity to, like, weeping for other people who are struggling and being sensitive to their pain. That's one of the practical ways to elevate and change that thing. That's that pain. Because we're being like, wow, like, I'm so sensitive right now. I can really feel another person's pain now more than ever because I'm feeling so sensitive. So going back to Akiva, the story of Akiva is that when he saw the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, he was with another one of the Chachamim, and all the Chachamim there wept. Rabbi Akiva started to laugh. Right, this is a famous story. He was the Moshe of his generation, the leader of his generation. He was unrestrained joy. He was laughing, and he was seeing the beginning of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And they asked him for his response. He said that the Nevi'im told us of many of the difficult periods that would happen, and then the good periods that would follow. So he said that now that they've seen that the negative has come to pass, I'm certain that so will the good afterwards. Because they said, you'll do sins and you'll be exiled and all these bad things will happen, and then Hashem will save you and return you. He said, wow, like, the beginning of the Nevuah is coming true. I know that the good is yet. So we know that he Erev Vayihi Boker. Last week we spoke about that it's so good that we know that the downs are going to come. And now we're saying that when the downs are so good, there's a light, a dawn that always comes after the darkness. So darkness, the Avodah Zarah is letting ourselves actually think that darkness is forever. Because that's how it feels sometimes. But not to say that we should shame ourselves for that, but that's giving it coming to the growth is saying Vayihi Erev Vayihi Boker. That every Erev is called by Boker. And the darkness, as dark it is, the light that comes through the darkness is going to be so much deeper. And we know that the wholesomeness that we receive after being broken, right? We always say there's my favorite quote is, there's nothing as whole as a broken heart. Because the wholeness that someone has in their life before they've ever plunged is false sense of wholeness. It's not a real wholeness. It's a false sense of wholeness, like the first shofar blast. We always say that the longer shofar blast at the end comes after the broken ones. To teach us that after we've been broken in life and then we piece ourselves back together, while we might feel broken, like I did this morning, I felt like I was too broken to be able to give the goodness of me to other people. I just felt like it wouldn't be fair to come and deliver, like, me not in my element. I felt like I want to be, like, shining and giving all of that light to everybody. And I was like, what if I don't have it in me? Is it fair to do that? So to really challenge that, like, am I really broken, or is a broken person who's pieced back together maybe more whole? I should have said this to myself, but there's nothing as whole as a broken heart. I would have come sooner. I would have been have an easier time. The togetherness that comes after your experience of brokenness is a much greater light. It's a much greater wholeness that comes after something being taken apart. Like you say that a double knot, if something is torn and you tie it, a double knot, that place is a much stronger place. So in the energy of the Tammuz, although it fell really low, the reason that Tammuz fell low is because the source of Tammuz was supposed to be the highest month. It was supposed to be the culmination of receiving the Torah and Sivan. Tammuz was supposed to be the time when we integrated it into our lives. Because Sivan was a revelation from above, from Hashem, of getting the Torah. And Tammuz is supposed to be us receiving the Torah and integrating it into our daily life. It was a very high potential. And instead, because of that holy potential, we ended up sinking very low. But there's still that high potential every single year. So much so that the Rambam says that these 3 weeks of mourning between Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, 21 days, right? There's exactly 21 days of mourning in the Jewish calendar in this 3-week period, right? From Tammuz to Tisha B'Av, we're mourning, we're not suffering, we're not going trips, we're not traveling. It's also a time we want to guard ourselves a lot from dangerous things, because like we said, it's like a broken bone. We want to be extra sensitive. It's a sensitive time, it's a sensitive area. So we want to be extra sensitive during this time. But the Rambam says that Mashiach comes, that these 3 weeks will be joyful. And I read the most beautiful thing that says that it's actually, in these 21 days, it's actually the holiest days of the year. It's the concentrated energy. If you count all the chagim on the calendar, all the days of chagim, there are 21 days of chagim. So we learn that all the concentrated light of the chagim, the highest level of light, are in these 3 weeks. Every day is like the concentrated level of all of the revelations and all of the chagim in these days. So it's a time when we truly can access the highest levels of light and revelation. But because of their choices, they chose to look at the outside of it. Through sight, we're going to talk in a minute. I mean, whoever has to go, but I wanted to talk a little bit about sight in a minute. However, so through these 3 weeks are a potential for tremendous goodness. Not because that Mashiach could come on Tisha B'Av more than any other time, because there's a lot of potential for light. So I'll end here for now. I'll do, if anyone wants to hear about sight, we can even speak about sight and rectifying sight and Reuven and choosing to see. But I really think that if we don't go into sight later, that this idea is sight. It's choosing how to look at this in our life, how we can look at it and just see darkness, or we can recognize that hidden in the darkness is good, and how we can search for that light in the darkness. So choosing to, in Tammuz, we're elevating our sight. Sight is connected to Reuven, we said, but it's also connected to the Miraglim, seeing the negative in Tammuz. And in Av, it's next month, it's the month of Shmiyah, listening. And Av is when the Miraglim, it's the month of Shimon, which is really cool. Shimon from listening. And it's when Bnei Israel heard the bad about Eretz Yisrael. But sight is a very powerful concept. And in this month, we're elevating our sight on such a deep way that we're basically saying that our sight is a very deep, there's external sight and then there's a deeper sight. There's looking deeper. We can look at things and see at things like this is nothing, this is bad, this is evil, I'm going to be sad, I'm going to cry, and it's going to be terrible. Or I can use my power of my sight to see extra vision, to see much, much deeper. We have our sight can go a lot deeper than we allow it to. So we can look at 2 things. There are people who can look at sight not just as we think that I'm looking at something and we all see the same thing. We can all look at one thing and see completely different things. First of all, we focus on. It could be a white page with a black dot, and everyone sees the black dot. Some people see all the white around it. There can be a situation that some people are like in seminary where all the girls are complaining, but one girl is like, "This is amazing. What are you guys complaining about? Like, we're in Israel, we're having the best time. Like, so, like the thing, like the food wasn't exactly what we wanted." So everyone can look at the thing and see different things. But even more than that, we can look at a situation, and some of us can see the bad in it, some of us can see the good in it. Some of us can look even deeper and see so much more than the first person sees. You can look at a piece of art and be like, oh, "So, what is that ridiculous picture?" And someone could see the depth, the work, the effort. We can look at a person who's having a bad day and who's being obnoxious, and we can see an obnoxious person, or we can use our sight to look deeper at everything and see a person who's broken, who's having a day, who's suffering, who needs a lot of extra love. We can look at our kids who are like yelling at us, being obnoxious, or we can see that they're just trying to get our attention because they miss us and they want us to love them, right? We could see somebody like being critical, or we could see somebody who's anxious and worried and scared and overwhelmed, right? We can look at every single person and we can see what we see on the outside, or we can use our Tammuz vision to tunnel in and see what the person really is communicating to us, what the situation is really communicating to me. Am I just stuck in traffic, or is there a reason that I'm here, that Hashem wants me to be here for a moment to do something in this place? So in Tammuz, we're elevating our sight to channel ourselves to just look at least one level deeper. There's so many levels at every single situation that we encounter to try to, and this is the elevation of sight in this month. It says it takes all of us and all of our sight and allows us to be elevated and be able to train our sight to see much, much deeper. It says like last year for the craft, we did mantras with Rachel Gaffin, where we put mantras. You can do this on your own now with permanent markers. Literally, we took watercolor, permanent markers, and we wrote mantras to elevate our vision, and we put it in different places at eye level. So at the door before you leave, be like, I look for the good in myself and in others. In the car, when we're stuck in traffic, I am exactly where I'm meant to be. That was just amazing. Because in the car, we get so stressed out, and we can like be like, wait a minute, like let me look one level deeper, right? In the morning, today is going to be the best day ever. By the mirror, like I see the beauty in myself and others. Hashem made me exactly as the way I'm meant to be. Is my favorite one to put by my mirror. Because you look in the mirror, you could look at yourself and see all the parts about myself that we hate, or we could see the beautiful person Hashem made exactly how Hashem planned without anything wrong in us. So we could see so many different things. So little reminders, visual reminders, just writing something on paper and taping it all over. Reminders that we want to look deeper, right? To see something a little bit deeper. I have a list of mantras, like it's Tammuz vision mantras. I send out, and I'd love to hear it for yours as well. Ways to look a little bit deeper. So through that, hopefully we can grow and through this month find the tremendous light that's hidden in Tammuz that comes from a much deeper place than even revealed light, because it's a greater light and it's a greater light that comes through challenge and through darkness. So I bless all of us to have dark vision, to have X-ray vision, to be able to see through the challenges in our life, through the darkness that other people bring towards us, to be able to have more compassion, more depth, to have our eyesight just a little vision test and bring our eyesight to a longer level. You can imagine like putting on just like Tammuz glasses to just like be able to look past what we're seeing at first value. Be like, I'm seeing this obnoxious person or this angry kid or this like kid. I'm like trying to ruin my life. But let me choose to just like take a minute and be like, wait, what's past that? What's past the surface? Because there's so much more than meets the eye. L'chaim, thank you for joining. Have a wonderful Tammuz. See you next week for the Parsha video.
Thank you.
So much we didn't even say about